Kenilworth. A romance is a historical romance novel by Sir Walter Scott, one of the Waverley novels, first published on the 13th of January 1821. Set in 1575, it leads up to the elaborate reception of Queen Elizabeth at Kenilworth Castle by the Earl of Leicester, who was complicit in the murder of his wife Amy Robsart at Cumnor. Historical romance is a broad category of mass-market fiction focusing on romantic relationships in historical periods, which Walter Scott helped popularize in the early 19th century. Sir Walter Scott, 1st Baronet FRSE Scott, the 15th of August 1771 to the 21st of September 1832, was a Scottish historical novelist, poet, playwright and historian. Many of his works remain classics of European and Scottish literature, notably the novels Ivanhoe, Rob Roy, Waverley, Old Mortality, The Heart of Midlothian and The Bride of Lammermoor, and the narrative poems The Lady of the Lake and Marmion. He had a major impact on European and American literature. Kenilworth is set in the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, and centers on the secret marriage of Robert Dudley, 1st Earl of Leicester, and Amy Robsart, daughter of Sir Hugh Robsart. Amy passionately loves her husband, and the Earl loves her in return, but he is driven by ambition. He is courting the Queen's favor, and only by keeping his marriage to Amy secret can he hope to rise to the height of power that he desires. At the end of the book, the Queen discovers the truth, to the shame of the Earl. The disclosure has come too late, for Amy has been murdered by the Earl's even more ambitious steward, Varney. Summary. Giles Gosling, the innkeeper, had just welcomed his mischievous nephew Michael Lambourne on his return from Flanders. He invited the Cornishman, Tressilian, and other guests to drink with them. Lambourne made a wager he would obtain an introduction to a certain young lady under the steward Foster's charge at Cumnor Place, seat of the Earl of Leicester, and the Cornish stranger begged permission to accompany him. On arriving there, Tressilian found that this lady was his former lady-love, Amy. He would have carried her back to her home, but she refused, and as he was leaving he quarrelled with Richard Varney, the Earl's squire, and might have taken his life had not Lambourne intervened. Amy was soothed in her seclusion by costly presents from the Earl, and during his next visit she pleaded that she might inform her father of their marriage, but he was afraid of Elizabeth's resentment. Warned by his host against the squire, and having confided to him how Amy had been entrapped, Tressilian left Cumnor by night, and, after several adventures by the way, reached the residence of Sir Hugh Robsart, Amy's father, to assist him in laying his daughter's case before the Queen. Returning to London, Tressilian's servant, Wayland Smith, cured the Earl of Sussex of a dangerous illness. On hearing about this from Walter Raleigh, Elizabeth at once set out to visit Leicester's rival, and it was in this way that Tressilian's petition, in Amy's behalf, was handed to her. The Queen was agitated to learn of this secret marriage. Varney was accordingly summoned to the royal presence, but he boldly declared that Amy was his wife, and Leicester was restored to the Queen's favor. Tressilian's servant then gained access to the secret Countess Amy as a peddler, and, having hinted that Elizabeth would shortly marry the Earl, sold her a cure for the heartache, warning her attendant Janet at the same time that there might be an attempt to poison her mistress. Meanwhile, Leicester was preparing to entertain the Queen at Kenilworth, where she had commanded that Amy should be introduced to her, and Varney was, accordingly, dispatched with a letter begging the Countess to appear at the revels pretending to be Varney's bride. Having indignantly refused to do so, and having recovered from the effects of a cordial which had been prepared for her by the astrologer Alasco, she escaped, with the help of her maid, from Cumnor, and started for Kenilworth, escorted by Wayland Smith. Travelling thither as brother and sister, they joined a party of mummers, and then, to avoid the crowd of people thronging the principal approaches, proceeded by circuitous bypaths to the castle. Having, with Dicky Sludge's help, passed into the courtyard, they were shown into a room, where Amy was waiting while her attendant carried a note to the Earl, when she was startled by the entrance of Tressilian, whom she entreated not to interfere until after the expiration of 24 hours. On entering the park, Elizabeth was received by her favourite attended by a numerous cavalcade bearing waxen torches, and a variety of entertainments followed. During the evening she inquired for Vani's wife, and was told she was too ill to be present. Tressilian offered to lose his head if within 24 hours he did not prove the statement to be false. Nevertheless, the ostensible bridegroom was knighted by the Queen. Receiving no reply to her note, which Wayland had lost, Amy found her way the next morning to a grotto in the gardens, where she was discovered by Elizabeth, who had just told her host that she must be the wife and mother of England alone. Falling on her knees, the Countess besought protection against Vani, who she declared was not her husband, and added that the Earl of Leicester knew all. The Earl was instantly summoned to the royal presence, and would have been committed to the Tower, had not Amy recalled her words, when she was consigned to Lord Hunsdon's care as bereft of her reason, Vani coming forward and pretending that she had just escaped from a special treatment for her madness. Leicester insisted on an interview with her, when she implored him to confess their marriage to Elizabeth, and then, with a broken heart, told him that she would not long darken his brighter prospects. Vani, however, succeeded in persuading him that Amy had acted in connivance with Tressilian, and in obtaining medical sanction for her custody as mentally disordered, asking only for the Earl's signet ring as his authority. The next day a duel between Tressilian and the Earl was interrupted by Dicky, who produced the Countess's note, and, convinced of her innocence, Leicester confessed that she was his wife. With the Queen's permission he at once deputed his rival and Sir Walter Raleigh to proceed to Cumnor, whither he had already dispatched Lambourne, to stay his squire's further proceedings. Vani, however, had shot the messenger on receiving his instructions, and had caused Amy to be conducted by Foster to an apartment reached by a long flight of stairs and a narrow wooden bridge. The following evening the tread of a horse was heard in the courtyard, and a whistle like the Earl's signal, upon which she rushed from the room, and the instant she stepped on the bridge, it parted in the middle, and she fell to her death. Her murderer poisoned himself, and the skeleton of his accomplice was found, many years afterwards, in a cell where he secreted his money. The news of the Countess's fate put an end to the revels at Kenilworth. Leicester retired for a time from court, and Sir Hugh Robsart, who died very soon after his daughter, settled his estate on Tressilian. Leicester pressed for an impartial inquiry. Though the jury found that Amy's death was an accident, concluding that Lady Dudley, staying alone, in a certain chamber, had fallen down the adjoining stairs, sustaining 2 head injuries and breaking her neck, it was widely suspected that Leicester had arranged his wife's death to be able to marry the Queen. 1575. Principal characters in bold. Giles Gosling, host of the Bonnie Black Bear. Michael Lambourne, his nephew. John Tapster. Will Hostler. Lawrence Goldthread, a mercer. Edmund Tressilian, Wayland Smith, Thomas Radcliffe, 3rd Earl of Sussex, Sir Nicholas Blunt, his Master of House, Sir Walter Raleigh, Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, Richard Varney, his follower, Anthony Foster, Warden of Cumnor Hall, Janet, his daughter, Erasmus Holiday, a school teacher, Dicky Sludge, alias Flibbertigibbet, Dr. Demetrius Doboby, alias Alasco, an astrologer, Master Crane, landlord of the Crane Inn at Marlborough, Demilison Crane, his wife, Jack Hostler, Gaffer Grimesby, Sampson, a junior tapster, Dame Crank, a laundress, Sir Hugh Robsart, of Lidcote Hall, Pammy Robsart, his daughter, Will Badger, his servant, Michael Nimblazon, inmate of Lidcote Hall, Queen Elizabeth, Lord Hunsdon, Lord Burleigh, Dr. Master, her physician, Bowyer, an usher, Lawrence Staple, a warder. Kenilworth is a novel of selfishness versus selflessness and ambition versus love. Amy and the Earl both struggle internally with selfishness and love, while Varney and Tressilian each typify the extremes of the two qualities. Perhaps the finest point of this work is its characterization. The Earl is shown as an ambition-driven man who will stoop to deceit and almost anything else in order to attain his goals, but with one saving grace, he loves Amy, and in the end gives up his pride and ambition to confess their marriage. Amy Robsart is a pretty, spoiled child whose tragic circumstances teach her maturity and determination, although such lessons come too late to save her. Tressilian is the serious, steadfast lover of Amy, and continues to try to save her from herself throughout the book and finally dies of a broken heart. Varney is the chief villain of the work. His greed and ambition know no bounds. It is he that pushes the Earl beyond what he would normally do to secure power, and it is he that finally murders Amy Robsart.